I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Monday, January the 13th, 2014. We open our news today with the funeral and mourning of former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, who passed away on Saturday at the age of 85. Sharon had been in a comatose state for the last 8 years since suffering a stroke in 2006. His condition had deteriorated last week, as we had been reporting to you. Sharon was laid to rest in Israel this afternoon. His coffin lay in state yesterday in front of the Knesset in Jerusalem for the Israeli public to pay their respects, and thousands of Israeli citizens arrived at the site throughout the day. A state funeral was held this morning at the Knesset and was attended by dignitaries from across the world, including a presidential delegation from the U.S. led by Vice President Joe Biden. The U.S. delegation also included U.S. Ambassador to Israel Don Shapiro and members of Congress Elliot Engel and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Sharon was eulogized at the state funeral by Vice President Biden, among many others, who praised Sharon for his courage, strength, and commitment to Israel and to the Jewish people.
From my observation, he was a complex man, but to understand him better, I think it's important. History will judge. He also lived in complex times in a very complex neighborhood. But like all historic leaders, all real leaders, he had a North Star that guided him. A North Star from which he never, in my observation, never deviated.
Former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, who was also in attendance, praised Sharon's passion for Israel's safety and well-being.
The same iron determination he took to the field of war, he took to the chamber of diplomacy. When that meant fighting, he fought. When that meant making peace, he sought peace.
Israeli President Shimon Peres called Sharon a friend, leader, and general. Both men served as Prime Minister and Defense Minister in Israel. Peres said Sharon's life was interwoven in the history of the state, and he had dedicated his life to the country. He told Sharon, "You were a shoulder that the nation's security could rest upon." And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called Sharon one of the greatest generals that the Jewish people and the Israel Defense Forces had ever known. He said Sharon belonged to the generation of Israel's founders and its independence.
Ariel is part of that generation of founding fathers. And that uprising, that resurrection. And resurrection was based on forming a generation of Jewish commanders and fighters that will renew the heritage of fighting in the land of Israel.
After the Knesset ceremony, a military convoy took Sharon's coffin and made its way to Sycamore Ranch, the Sharon family ranch in the Negev in Israel's south. On the way, the convoy stopped in Latrun, a strategic hilltop that overlooks the road to Jerusalem and is now a war memorial, where Sharon received a special salute by IDF's general staff. The convoy then proceeded to Sycamore Ranch for the burial, and near the ranch on Anemone Hill, in a military ceremony where Sharon was laid to rest next to his wife Lily. Ariel Sharon is survived by sons Omri and Gilad, both of whom paid tribute to their father at the burial. Gilad recounted his father's achievements and missions, saying, quote, "Time and time again, you turned the impossible into reality." Shalom TV will replay our broadcast of Sharon's state funeral tonight, Monday night at 9 p.m. And expressions of condolences and mourning have been coming in from the Jewish world and beyond for the former prime minister. The American Jewish Committee called Sharon one of the giants of Israel's founding generation. Executive Director David Harris said Sharon was, quote, "a man of towering strength, uncompromising commitment, steely determination, and creative vision." Union for Reform Judaism President Rabbi Rick Jacobs called Sharon an iconic leader whose love for Israel and the Jewish people infused his entire career. The leaders of the Jewish Federations of North America, Board Chair Michael Siegel, and President and CEO Jerry Silverman noted that Sharon was a highly regarded military leader, but also a peacemaker and a man who worked his entire life for the unity of the Jewish people. Rabbinical Assembly Executive Vice President Rabbi Julie Schoenfeld and President Rabbi Gerald Skolnick also noted Sharon's roles as fighter and peacemaker and said, "We have no doubt that his decisive actions, both as a commander in Israel's wars and as a prime minister willing to act boldly for the sake of peace, have left a profound mark on Israel. We hope that Sharon's legacy," they said, "of a move from warrior to peace seeker will inspire Israel and the Jewish people as this work remains unfinished." The leaders of the Anti-Defamation League National Chair Barry Curtis Lusher and National Director Abe Foxman said that while Sharon's positions and policies were sometimes controversial, he always had Israel's best interests at heart, and said Sharon's legacy is a more secure state of Israel. They said it is not only Israel, but the Jewish people, the U.S., and the international community who have lost a towering figure who offered hope to his people and the region. B'nai B'rith International said that Israel had lost a unique and unusual leader who demonstrated the ability to change his way of thinking and seeking out new paths. The Jewish Council for Public Affairs President Chair Larry Gold praised Sharon for having the capacity to adjust his course based on changing circumstances in the country. The Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations Chairman Robert Sugarman and Executive Vice Chairman Malcolm Hoenlein praised Sharon for his immense contribution, courage, and commitment. World Jewish Congress President Ronald Lauder said many Israelis may fault one or another of Sharon's political or military decisions, but probably no single individual fought harder to safeguard Israel. And the National Council of Young Israel called Sharon a passionate defender of Israel who helped shape the future of the Jewish state, saying his tireless and valiant efforts on behalf of Israel left an indelible mark on the country that he loved so dearly. And U.S. President Barack Obama released a statement on Sharon's passing. The president said he was sending deepest condolences from him and his wife and on behalf of the American people to the family of the former Israeli prime minister and to the people of Israel on the loss of the leader who Obama said dedicated his life to the state of Israel. The president also reaffirmed the U.S.'s commitment to Israel's security and appreciation for the enduring friendship with Israel. Obama said, "We continue to strive for lasting peace and security for the people of Israel, including through our commitment to the goal of two states living side by side in peace and security." As Israel says goodbye to Prime Minister Sharon, Obama said, "We join with the Israeli people in honoring his commitment to his country." Former U.S. President George W. Bush, who was in the White House when Sharon served as prime minister, called Sharon a warrior for the ages and a partner in seeking security for the Holy Land and a better, peaceful Middle East. And former U.S. President Bill Clinton, whom Sharon met as foreign minister, said in a joint statement with his wife, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, that Sharon gave his life to Israel to bring it into being, to sustain and preserve it, and at the end of his long service to create a new political party committed to both a just peace and lasting security. Turning now to other news, rockets landed in Israel's southern region later today, shortly after the Sharon burial. 2 rockets were fired from Gaza and landed in the Sha'ar HaNegev Regional Council. The rockets landed in an open field, and there was no damage or injury reported. Earlier today, the IDF had warned Hamas not to allow rocket fire during the memorial ceremony for Sharon. And Vice President Joe Biden's office said that after his attendance at the Sharon funeral, Biden was set to hold talks with Israeli leaders. Biden was scheduled to meet separately in Jerusalem with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, as well as with Israel's President Shimon Peres. U.S. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, part of the delegation sent for the funeral, said yesterday that the trip presented another opportunity for progress in peace efforts. She said that every time there was a chance for the U.S. to help Israel in the cause of, quote, crafting and finalizing a 2-state solution, we take that opportunity. This, she said, is no exception.
But we talked today about the possibility of...
And U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry addressed peace efforts in the region with foreign ministers from the Arab League last night in Paris. Kerry told the ministers that talks between the Palestinians and the Israelis were at a critical point, with very difficult and challenging decisions ahead. He praised both PA President Abbas and Prime Minister Netanyahu for their courageous and determined leadership, and saying that the two had already made tough choices and are contemplating even tougher choices in the weeks ahead. Kerry said the Arab leaders expressed their support for the U.S. peace efforts and for reaching a framework agreement for permanent status negotiations.
Both of us have agreed to try to work to see if that could be achieved.
A Jewish man was stabbed Saturday night in Jerusalem in an apparent terror attack. The man was stabbed in the back of his neck near the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem's Old City. He remains in moderate but stable condition at Jerusalem's Sharon Tzedek Hospital. Police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld said that the attacker fled the scene after stabbing the victim from behind, and he said it was clear that this was a terrorist attack and not a criminal incident. Police were searching the area for the suspect. And turning to our Shalom TV programming for tonight, Monday, January the 13th. Coming up at 6:30, Katz's Deli marks its 125th anniversary in a star-studded celebration hosted by Gilbert Gottfried. Then at 7, a new segment of the Wisdom of Dr. Ruth Westheimer. At 7:30, you can catch the debut of a new show here on Shalom TV called Eye on Israel, where Shachar Azani of the Israeli Consulate in New York City interviews Sivan Yaari about the organization Innovation Africa. And then at 8 p.m., Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addresses the opening session of the Jewish Federations of North America's General Assembly in Jerusalem. And then at 9 p.m. tonight, as I mentioned earlier, Shalom TV will replay our broadcast of the state funeral service of former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. That's all coming up here tonight on Shalom TV and shalomtv.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Monday, January the 13th, 2014. I'm Teisha Bader.